this representative is asking John Kerry if he ever had a private jet. He's like, no, I don't personally own a private jet. And they're just like, but these documents say that your wife has a private jet. He's like, well, yes, my wife has had a private jet, and I've flown on it sometimes. Oh, that's a completely different story. My friend said that's like me saying I don't have a house. My wife just owns the house. It's like
Yeah.
it's so insane. And the crazy thing about this is, if you look into John Kerry's family, his wife is Teresa Hines, heir to the Heinz ketchup throne, by the way. And before, she was married to a different congressman or a different senator, excuse me. And then he died, and then she just jumped ship to another politician. She's really marrying for love, Eric.
Sounds like Kimberly Guilfoyle. No shade.
Ooh, shots fired.
Mr. Secretary, in exchange with Mr. Mills, you just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record article here from February 15th of 2023. The John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. Mr. Secretary, do you stand by that testimony that you've never owned or
I personally,
your family?
by
your family?
Personally, yes, my wife owned a plane, and so
You flew on that plane?
Not in a number of years, but I have flown on it.
And
Sure.
this article is not then inaccurate that your family owned a plane, you flew on a plane.
My wife
Mr.
owned.
Secretary,
My wife owned a
here's
plane.
the issue.
Yeah.
This isn't some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and
No
your
pun intended.
family and or
Lie.
yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause, Mr. Secretary. But I'll move on. I just want to know from a record standpoint.
Afford me the right, at least, to set the record straight here. I do not fly on a private jet. I do
On
not
Wednesdays.
I fly commercially.
Have you
on
flown
all
on a
of my
private jet since
responsibilities.
you've taken this position?
Just let me finish. I have flown 5 times in the last 2.5 years on Mill-Air, which you also fly on,
Sure.
or some of you who travel fly on, 5 times. Otherwise, all of my trips are commercial
Have you
airlines.
flown on a private jet in a personal or official capacity since you've taken this position?
Possibly once.
No, man.
I don't. I think I just don't. I'm trying to think. Of
I think you need to take the broader point of how this appears to the American people
But no,
as
it
we're asking them
shouldn't
to
appear
take
that. Let
that.
me tell you why.
We're
We're not asking
these
Americans.
testimonies?
We're not asking Americans not to fly.
Yes, you
know,
are,
you're,
dude.
You're trying to create.
They've already done this thing in Europe where they've eliminated a whole bunch of the short flights. They've eliminated tons of flights that, people would just use to travel around within Europe that are very cheap because they don't want you to fly. We're not asking Americans not to fly. Is that why we've the price of jet fuel is way up? Is that why the price of gas is up? Is that why, we're telling you that you have to sell electric cars and eliminate gas cars? And he's just a bad liar, Eric. His face is a catcher's mitt, and he comes up here and he's like, "Well, what do you mean? It's actually my wife's jet. I don't actually fly. I've only flown 5 times since I've been in power. I can't remember. I fly to the climate protests in Europe, the and the World Economic Forum. Of course, he flies to.
Well,
It's just utter nonsense."
just think about how condescending you have to be and how much of a jerk you have to be to say, well, I think I flew private, maybe once. I'm not sure, bro. Come on, give us a break. You're trying to be humble about like your private flights. I think possibly once since I've taken. All right, let's back up. We're all not that stupid. I like to think that even the spineless little Republican weasels who are sitting up there behind their desk, if me and you, two jackass podcast hosts, are we smarter than the Republicans? Are we more aware of what's happening than the Republicans on that stand? You can't talk to these people as though they're absolutely morons. Like, well, maybe, and technically my wife. Like, give us a break, bro. We're not that stupid.
I was just going to say, he's got to get through the time. He knows the person asking him a question has a limited amount of time. So that's basically what it's about
Okay.
getting through that time so he can obfuscate until then. What I have also a problem with the representative there, Waltz was his name, is that I disagree with his premise where we're all doing something for the greater good. And that goes to what you were talking about earlier, is how the Republicans and a lot of right-wing people, they want so badly to be liked by left-wing people
Yeah.
and pretend as if they're doing it in good faith. Ben Shapiro's always said it's wrong to assume that the person you're arguing with is doing so in bad faith. And that can be true if you're in some sort of straightforward debate, but this
Tim
isn't a
Pool says
debate.
that too. Tim Pool
Yeah,
says something
but
like that
when
all the
you're
time.
in Congress and in a hearing and the goal is, we're all doing gotchas, it's never in good faith, which is why podcasts exist, which is why Rogan's popular, which is why to a degree Bill Maher is popular, all this stuff, Tim Pool, because you can actually get answers out of somebody. And when he goes up there and says, "Well, we're all doing it for the greater good." No, we're not doing it for the greater good. They're doing it so their preferred billionaires can make money, as opposed to oil billionaires who tend to be right wing, or Saudis. They prefer their left wing billionaires who are communists or left wingers, or Eastern Ukrainian oligarchs and such.
Sorry, dude. It's
They
like it's like thunder. There's always sorry. There's like
I can't
I
hear
can
it.
well there's thunder, but it's not raining yet. But it's going to start raining. It's and it like flickers the lights. It's crazy here.
Well, what
Um,
happened when we saw Tucker Carlson on Friday questioning Republicans who couldn't run away? We saw him completely destroy Mike Pence on Europe. We saw him destroy Tim Scott on the border and illegal immigrants. Ron DeSantis just avoided the question, and that's what they try to do. They avoid the question. They try to drum up support from the crowd. Asa Hutchinson got destroyed. This is what happens when they actually have to sit there and answer questions, which is why they never do. Trump's the only one who does that. He didn't go to this thing because
and
he
that's
probably
why
thinks
people
it
like
can't.
him. And
He
that's why
probably thinks
people
that it
like him.
can't help him to go to
But
that.
first of
But
all,
go ahead.
well, I just want to say, Asa. That's a girl's name. Am I tripping? Like Asa, like bro,
I think
that's
it's
a
a
woman.
1920s name.
Okay. Secondly, what John Kerry here is saying, um, without the sugarcoating, is very quite simply rules are for poor people, right? That's what he's saying. That's the Hillary Clinton school of, it's the Gavin Newsom, the Nancy Pelosi, rules are for poor people, very simply. And I get closer, the more we sort of we work our way through this cultural war, the more I think that the climate agenda, the climate crisis, the climate hysteria becomes almost as bad as the transformer agenda, okay? Because the transformer agenda has been boiled down to just shouting over people and you can't just no questions, nothing, just obey. And then as soon as a guy like and I think this has happened a couple times over now, but a guy like Zuby will identify as a woman and then destroy women just to prove the point. And you start to see these surveys, even by Newsweek or USA Today, or these mainstream articles or these mainstream outlets that say most Americans don't agree with this. I think you even wrote an article a handful of months ago about I think it was about African Americans specifically, and I shouldn't have even said that because I think we don't say African Canadian, we don't say African British, neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make is I think this climate change thing has become, it will eventually bypass the transformer agenda as being the most destructive, quite simply because reality will undoubtedly come for the transformer agenda. They cannot outrun the truth, but the climate change agenda is not. There's no baseline for it, right? They can always just move the goalpost. The transformers can't move the goalpost anymore, right? They're gonna get backed into a corner. They painted themselves into the corner. The climate change people can just change the science, or they can say, oh well, the world was gonna end in 2021 or 20 or whatever it was, but now it's changed a little bit. So they can always move the goalpost because it's not based in any reality, right? So the makeup of a human being has a concrete truth, and they want to shut you down from spreading that very simple truth that really shouldn't have to be explained to anybody, but you can't say that. Whereas the climate change stuff can always change, and you're not a scientist, so you can never know about it. Like they're going to talk to you about emission footprint and greenhouse and all this stuff. None of it makes any sense, but they can move that much easier than backing someone into a corner who's saying, I'm going to get a uterine transplant. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. It's one of those things they can always move the goalpost on.
Yeah.
And whatever they can move the goalpost on, they will use to make you out to be a bad person if you don't go along with the things that make the money.
Turn it up, Jordan.